My name is Tomika Morrell. I'm 33 years old. When I opened the door to my own home that afternoon and saw my clothes scattered on the floor, something heavy settled in my chest like wet concrete drying around my ribs. The neat piles I'd folded before work were gone. In their place, shirts, pants, even my work blazer slumped in a cheap heap by the entrance, as if I were an unwanted guest who'd overstayed a free trial. My boyfriend, Adrian, stood there with his arms crossed, jaw set, eyes hard in that careful way people use when they want to look reasonable while doing something unforgivable. "You're not sleeping here tonight," he said. "Find somewhere else. Think about how you treat Maya." His voice didn't rise. It didn't have to. The sight of my things on the floor said the rest. Just a few hours earlier, I went to work believing we were a team. Threadbare in places, sure, but still sewn together by enough history to hold. Now I was being evicted from my own life, not by a landlord, not by a stranger, but by the man I'd promised to build something with. And all because I'd asked his sister, Maya, 20-something, perfectly capable of working, to contribute something, anything, to the home she'd been living in for free. For months, she'd eaten our food, used our electricity, lounged on our couch through entire seasons of comfort shows, left her bowls in the sink like we ran a motel with turn-down service. I didn't scream at her. I didn't call her names. I simply said the obvious. If you live here, you help here. Money or chores. Pick one. Fairness, I've learned, can sound like hostility to someone who's never paid a bill. I stood with my hand still on the doorknob, suspended in that weird, airless second before a fall. My salary covered the rent, most of the groceries, the Wi-Fi, the streaming accounts we didn't need but somehow had. Suddenly, I was the outsider. Maya didn't even look at me. She was draped across the couch, one arm hooked over the backrest, an amused curl at her mouth like she'd been rehearsing for this scene. Triumph flashed across her face. Blink, and you'd miss it. But I didn't. She had what she wanted, a wedge hammered cleanly between us. "I'm leaving," I said, quieter than I expected. "But this isn't over." I gathered enough from the pile to get through a night, jeans, a t-shirt, the blazer I'd ironed before dawn, and walked out. I closed the door gently because I refused to give anyone the satisfaction of slamming it. The motel on the edge of town smelled like a lost decade preserved in lemon disinfectant. The ceiling above the bed was cracked like a dried riverbed. The lamp buzzed a thin, relentless note. I stared at the stain on the carpet and replayed his words. "Think about how you treat my sister." So I thought. All night, I thought. The edges of things got sharper. His careful tone, her pleased little smirk, the way both of them moved around me like I was an obstacle to be shoved out of the way. By morning, something in me had reset. People like to say anger is a fire, but mine cooled into glass. Clear, reflective, unbreakable if handled correctly. If they wanted me out, fine. But the life they enjoyed had been balanced on my invisible labor. My direct deposits, my grocery runs after late meetings, my free rides to interviews Maya wasn't ready to attend. If I stepped back, just a step, what would happen? I rented a small furnished apartment with peeling paint and a wobbly table whose legs argued with the floor. It wasn't home, it was a breathing space. Every night after work, I opened my laptop and looked at numbers. Our joint account, my individual account, auto pays and subscriptions we didn't need, the rent that went out like clockwork every first of the month because I was the clock. I made a list of what was truly ours and what was frankly mine. Photos sucked me in. I scrolled. Birthday cakes, road trips, one disastrous attempt at a camping weekend where a raccoon robbed us blind. In so many pictures, I thought we were happy. But a pattern emerged like a watermark once you know to look. Maya was in most of them. Always near Adrian's shoulder. Always there. Not an intruder exactly, more like a vine that had grown around our furniture while I was busy wiping down the windows. That understanding didn't gut me the way I expected. It clarified things. Maybe this wasn't sudden. Maybe I'd ignored signs because love is comfortable with its own illusions. So I pressed into the work. Quiet decisions. Correctly timed moves. Nothing dramatic. The kind of choices that don't raise a voice but change the temperature of a room. Before I took a scalpel to the practicalities, I wanted one answer. Was Adrian truly blind to what he was doing? Or had he decided, somewhere small and private, that his sister's comfort mattered more than my dignity? I went back one night at an hour I knew they wouldn't expect. My keys still worked. The hallway light clicked on with a tired hum. Laughter spilled from the living room. Maya's bright and brittle, Adrian's lower, like he was trying to appear relaxed. I didn't walk in. I stood just outside the frame of their conversation and listened. "She'll crawl back," Maya said. "You'll see. She needs you." "Maybe," he answered, a shrug in his voice. "She always overreacts. Money this, money that." Control is such an interesting word. In the right mouth, it sounds like truth. In the wrong one, it's a slur. I had carried us. The roof, the light, the meals, not control. Responsibility. But to Adrian, responsibility and control were twins born too close together. A phone on the coffee table lit up. A name flashed. A notification so quick it could have been a trick of the eye. Sabrina. He flipped the phone face down. Maya giggled. "Tell her you're busy." Her. The syllable moved through my body like a cold draft. I stepped back into the hallway before the quiet could betray me. The elevator door reflected me as it closed. Hair pulled back into an apology. Blazer still neat like I hadn't learned a thing. The mirrored panel smelled faintly of cologne that didn't belong to him. Something sharper, unfamiliar, as if a stranger had passed through earlier and left a trace. Maybe I was inventing ghosts. Maybe not. I drove nowhere for a while, letting the city stitch itself around me. Late buses, takeout sweat on sidewalks, couples walking in a bubble I couldn't see into anymore. Then I went back to the apartment, sat at the wobbly table, and opened the laptop with steady hands. Redirect paycheck. A few clicks. Simple, almost insultingly so. Pause the grocery auto reload. Another click. Review utilities gated behind my name. Hold them. Not forever, just until I could see clearly. I wasn't abandoning anything. I was proving a point the way a scientist proves a hypothesis. If you remove the unseen support, does the structure still stand? Days passed in a rhythm that looked like normal life to anyone glancing over. I worked. I answered emails. I said no worries in meetings and meant it half the time. My phone vibrated occasionally. "When are you coming back? We need to talk. Are you being stubborn?" I didn't respond. Silence became a room I could finally breathe in. 2 weeks later, the first fisher whistled like wind under a door. Adrian called. He didn't say hello. "The rent payment was declined," he blurted, angry and incredulous at once. "What's going on?" "I told you I needed time to think," I said, calm as cold water. I guess the account needed time to think too. Behind him, muffled, Maya's voice. "Put her on speaker. She doesn't get to—" I pictured them. Maya draped over the couch like a cat that never hunts. Adrian pacing because motion feels like control. I let the silence hang long enough to mean something. "Do you remember the night you threw my clothes on the floor?" I asked. "You told me to leave. Now you're upset the money left with me?" "You're being petty," he snapped. "Maya's been through a lot. She needs—" "Help is not the same as sheltering," I said. "And help doesn't look like humiliating your partner to protect someone who refuses to grow up." I ended the call before he could shape that into a new accusation. That night I lay awake, listening to the apartment's thin bones creak. Grief moved through me. Slow, not dramatic, the kind that doesn't demand witnesses. I thought about how love can turn sour in the mouth if you ignore the rot long enough. I thought about how many times I said we when I meant I. A moth tapped itself senseless against the lamp and then understood the light wasn't for it. Days blurred again. At work, I laughed at a joke I'd heard twice before. I finished a deck. I answered a client who kept using my name the way salespeople do when they want to pin you to the chair. And somewhere between a status call and a spreadsheet, clarity settled. I didn't need to fight in the living room or be right in the kitchen. I only had to do what I'd already started. Step back and let the truth introduce itself. One late night, curiosity drove me past the building. The blinds were half closed. Through a slit, I saw Adrian pacing with his phone in his hand while Maya sprawled in blue TV light, controller slack in her fingers. Even from across the street, the tension in their bodies told a full story. A man who'd run out of easy answers, and a woman who'd never had to find any. The next morning, my phone buzzed with a message I read twice. "We need to meet, just you and me." I stared at it, then at the wobbly table, then at my hands. I agreed to a diner at the edge of town with coffee that burned your tongue and booths that never stopped squeaking. He arrived looking tired, as if the mirror had started telling the truth to him too. He wanted to talk. I let him for a while, but I wasn't there to rescue the comfort he missed. I was there to make sure he understood the price of it. Not with threats, with terms. If love is real, it survives honesty. If it's not, honesty hurries it to its proper burial. Either way, I was done being the only adult in a house full of children pretending they were owed a kingdom. And somewhere between the clatter of plates and the hiss of the espresso machine, I realized my anger had finished cooling. It had become something clean. Not revenge, not yet. Just the decision to let consequences speak in my place. I didn't answer Adrian's texts for 3 days after the diner, because I needed the noise inside me to settle until I could hear only facts. Facts are stubborn, but they're honest companions when love starts lying to you. I redirected what remained of my autopays and moved our shared subscriptions into a holding pen labeled "Later, if earned." The grocery card, which had always refilled itself from my paycheck like a polite river, ran dry. The utilities, accounts locked behind my name, shifted to pending review. I wasn't playing games. I was documenting reality. If I stepped back, what happened to the life that depended on me pretending I wasn't holding it up? By midweek, the first cracks reported themselves like weather alerts. Declined, late, action required. Adrian called from a number that used to make my stomach flip. Now it just vibrated across the wobbly table until I let it settle into silence. When I finally picked up, he went straight to anger, the fastest way to feel powerful without doing anything hard. "You can't just shut everything off, Tomika." "I didn't shut everything off," I said. "I stepped out of a system where I was the only one stepping in." He sighed, exasperation disguised as reason. "You know Maya's looking for work. She has interviews." "Does she? Or does she have a morning routine that starts at noon?" "That's unfair." "Fair would have been asking her to carry even a corner of the weight before you told me to leave." Silence pressed its cool palm between us, then a quieter voice, the one he used when he wanted me to blend my boundaries back into the wallpaper. "I don't want to fight." "I'm not fighting," I said. "I'm observing." That night, I met with a lawyer named Naomi Reed, a woman who looked at problems like puzzles and carried a pen that clicked with satisfying precision. She asked for dates and names and documents, not drama. I gave her a neat stack, lease terms, payment histories, the dull arteries of a home. She skimmed, nodded, underlined. "You've over-contributed," she said calmly. "Separating is straightforward. Your exposure is limited. If he wants partnership, he can demonstrate it. If not, you can disengage cleanly." The word demonstrate lodged in me like a pin. Small, sharp, useful. Demonstrate meant action, not apologies. Demonstrate meant growth with receipts. On my way back, I stopped at a pharmacy for toothpaste and left with a sense I couldn't name, lighter than relief, heavier than hope. Outside, the air carried the mineral scent of rain that hadn't started yet, a storm threatening the courtesy of a warning. The next afternoon, Adrian texted a photo of the electricity bill with a red banner across it, then followed up with, "Is this really what you want? To watch us drown?" The plural sat oddly. Us. The man who had stood shoulder to shoulder with his sister to push me out now wanted to hide behind the shape of a couple. I typed and deleted until I left it at, "What I want is sustainable respect." That evening, I drove by the building again. Through the slit in the blinds, I watched Maya wrap a blanket around herself like a crown, and Adrian pace in circles. The television flashed a blue screen that read "no signal." I should have felt triumphant. Instead, I felt accurate. This was never about revenge. It was about accurate accounting, of money, of effort, of love. 2 days later, Adrian asked to meet. Same diner, same booth, with the same squeak that might have been a warning the first time if I'd been listening. He arrived with his hair uncombed and a red indentation on his cheek like he'd slept on the couch. He tried for a smile. It almost worked. "Okay," he said, hands flat on the table like he was surrendering. "I get it. You made your point." "What point do you think I made?" "That we can't do this without you." I waited. "And that Maya needs to contribute." "Contribute," I echoed, letting the words sit long enough to sour. "She doesn't need to contribute, Adrian. She needs to carry. She has 2 hands and a heartbeat. She can carry." He looked away at the pastry case like sugar could remind him of easier problems. "She's family." "So am I said. "Or I was, when you needed my name on the lease." He flinched, small but visible. I almost felt sorry. Almost. "Look," he said softer. "I told her to pick up shifts. She's applying." "Good," I said. And what about Sabrina? His head snapped back like I'd opened a door he didn't know I could see behind. What about her? Your phone lit up with her name the night I stopped by. Maya told me. Maya told you what? His voice sharpened, a reflexive counterpunch. That you like having two women arguing over whose version of you is more generous. Tomika, that's not what's happening. I'm not accusing you of cheating, I said evenly. I'm accusing you of triangulation. It's cheaper than therapy, and it keeps you at the center without choosing to grow. He stared at me, the way someone stares at a painting they suddenly understand. He had always mistaken my calm for softness. He was learning that clarity isn't gentle, even when it's quiet. I haven't seen Sabrina in months, he said finally. She reached out. I didn't encourage it. Delete her number, I said. Block her. And tell your sister that this is the last month she lives like a guest. I leaned in, not to threaten, but to make sure the words went exactly where they needed to land. If you want partnership, you'll demonstrate it. With boundaries, with work, with choices I can see, not just apologies I can hear. He rubbed his eyes. You want me to kick her out into the street? I want you to stop pretending she lives on a street that leads only to our door. He exhaled, long and shaky. The coffee arrived, hissing in its cup like a small warning. He wrapped his hands around it and stared into the surface as if answers might float to the top like cream. Come home, he said. We'll figure it out together. I'm not coming back into a triangle, I said. I'm not returning as a bank, a maid, or a referee. If I come back, it's to a house with two adults and one clear plan. What does that plan look like? Simple, I said. Maya pays rent or does a documented share of chores on a schedule you enforce without me nagging you. She actively job hunts, with proof. You block Sabrina and stop using me as the villain in stories you tell to avoid your own discomfort. We start couples therapy. You transfer half of the deposits you've relied on me to cover into a joint account we both manage. And when you introduce me to your sister, you do it like you mean it. This is Tomika. She's my partner. Respect her, or we have nothing to discuss. He winced. That's a lot. It's the bare minimum, I said. We sat in the quiet clatter of other people's lives. Forks, laughter, the soft soundtrack of mornings that weren't on fire. I put a 20 under my cup and slid out of the booth. Think, I said, not about me, about who you are when no one is carrying you. Outside, the sky had shifted from the threat of rain to the kind of pale light that makes everything look briefly forgiven. I didn't feel forgiven. I felt aligned. That night, I muted our thread and let the phone live on the other side of the room. At 1:13 a.m., it buzzed so long it woke me anyway. A text from an unknown number with a photo of a bathroom mirror and a lipstick kiss on the glass. Miss you. Doors always open. No signature. No need for one. The next morning, Sabrina's number was blocked on my phone, not because I needed to, but because I refused to be the stagehand in anyone else's performance. Later that day, Maya called me from Adrian's phone. She didn't bother with hello. Are you happy? The Wi-Fi's gone, and the power company said, You're speaking to an adult, I said. Try again. She huffed. Can you just tell me what you want? What I want is not a mystery, I said. I stated it to Adrian. He'll fill you in, or he won't. Either way, the era of me paying for your comfort while you mock my boundaries is over. I never mocked you. The night you laughed when he told me to leave, I said. The room remembers, even if you don't. She hung up on the truth before it could finish its sentence. In the days that followed, the apartment learned the shape of my quiet. I bought a plant I was sure I would kill and watered it anyway. I took long showers and let my skin remember that warmth didn't need to be earned through service. I pressed my hand against the window and felt the city vibrate back. Somewhere in that hum, I located the exact center of my life and realized it had room for love, but not for begging. 3 nights later, Adrian showed up at my door unannounced, shoulders slumped, eyes rimmed in tired red. He held a paper bag like an offering, pad thai from the place we used to pretend was our little secret, even though half the neighborhood knew it by scent. I told Maya she has 2 weeks, he said. She called me heartless. I told her I'm learning to have a spine. I blocked Sabrina. I booked a therapy consult for next Tuesday. If you come home, I'll transfer half of the savings into a joint account and set up automatic contributions. I'll write a chore schedule and enforce it. Not for you, for me, because I want to be a man who can carry weight. He didn't reach for me. He let the bag swing between us, warm and fragrant, evidence that he remembered a version of us that felt like ease. Don't say come home to fix us, I said. Say come home to continue the life we're both repairing with our hands on the same tools. Come home, he said, voice low, and watch me demonstrate. I didn't answer then. I took the bag, set it on the counter, and divided the noodles into 2 bowls, as if we were just 2 people who liked dinner. We ate in the soft clink of forks. When he stood to leave, he didn't ask again. He just said, I'll text you tomorrow with proof of what I promised. After he closed the door, I leaned my forehead against the cool wood and let the quiet decide for me. Not yet. Not no. Not yes. Demonstrate, I thought. Then we'll talk. The plant on the windowsill looked a little less doomed. I turned off the light and watched the city pulse. Somewhere across town, a fuse box clicked on, and I smiled. Not because I'd won, but because accuracy had finally shown itself as mercy. For the first time in weeks, I let a full day pass without checking my phone. No anxious scrolling, no waiting for a message that might reopen wounds disguised as closure. I wanted stillness. But stillness, I was learning, has a way of attracting truth. By the 3rd day, the silence broke. First as a voicemail from Adrian, then another from an unknown number. When I finally pressed play, I heard Sabrina's voice. Sweet, practiced, deliberate. You think you're the reason he's changing? Tomika, please. He's been like this since before you. You just made it obvious. The words weren't loud, but they hit like cold water. There was no anger in her tone, just the confidence of someone who still believed she had access to a door that should have been locked long ago. I saved the message, not as ammunition, as evidence of the pattern, of the quiet way manipulation hides behind soft syllables. That evening, Adrian texted, I handled it. She won't contact you again. Please trust me. I wanted to. I really did. But trust isn't a light switch. It's a muscle. It weakens when neglected, trembles when tested, and rebuilds only through consistent movement. 2 weeks passed. Adrian sent updates like homework turned in on time. Maya applied to 2 jobs. Therapy session went well. Utilities reinstated, under my name this time. His tone had changed. Less defense, more effort. Then, one Friday evening, my doorbell rang. When I opened it, I didn't see Adrian. I saw Maya, arms crossed, expression carved from stubborn pride. Don't worry, she said before I could speak. I'm not here to fight. Good, I said, you'd lose. A flicker of amusement broke her mask. Fair enough. She shifted her weight. I just wanted to say I get it now. Maybe not all of it, but enough. I waited. You were right, she admitted. About responsibility. About how easy it is to take advantage when someone keeps saying, it's fine. I thought you were trying to control everything, but really, you were just trying to hold it together. I hadn't expected an apology, not even a half-formed one. It disarmed me more than any insult could. What changed? I asked. She hesitated, then said quietly, Sabrina. My stomach tightened. What about her? She called me, Maya said. Said she just wanted to check in. Then she started asking if I thought you'd actually leave Adrian for good. She said maybe that would be for the best, that he needs someone who doesn't nag him about money. It was weird. It wasn't weird. It was strategic. She's been stirring things for months, I said. Maya nodded. I see that now. And I told Adrian that if he doesn't block her, I'll do it myself. For my sake, too. I don't like being someone's pawn. For a moment, we stood there, 2 women who had circled the same man's gravity for too long. Then she said, I'm moving out next week. Got a job at a boutique. It's not much, but it's mine. That's more than enough, I said. And Maya, don't let anyone convince you that dependence is loyalty. Her eyes softened. I won't. When she left, the air in the apartment felt lighter, like a window had been opened somewhere deep inside the story. That night, Adrian called. I let it go to voicemail. His message was short, almost careful. She told me she came to see you. I hope that's okay. I'm not asking you to come home yet. I just wanted you to know she's leaving. Then a pause. I'm sorry it took all this for me to see what you meant. I replayed that line, to see what you meant, again and again. Not to agree, not to apologize for, to see. That's all I ever wanted. A week later, Maya moved out. The house that had once been a battlefield now stood quiet. Adrian sent a photo. Bare hallway, couch cleared, sunlight spilling across the floor. It's just me now, he wrote. But I'd learned to be careful with emptiness. Sometimes it's peace. Sometimes it's the prelude to another storm. I didn't answer right away. Instead, I walked through my own small apartment, trailing my fingers along the chipped paint, the coffee cup rings on the table. It wasn't pretty, but it was mine. and it had been built on truth, not tolerance. 3 days later, Adrian showed up again. No warning, just the sound of knuckles against wood and the faint smell of rain on his jacket. "Can I come in?" he asked. I nodded. He stood in the doorway like he didn't know what to do with his hands. "Maya's gone," he said. "It's quiet." "Quiet can be good," I said. "I know, I just didn't realize how much of the noise was me." He set an envelope on the table. I closed the old account. "Here's the balance split evenly. I transferred my half of the rent to you for next month. It's not about control, it's about proof." Proof, demonstration, action. He'd listened. Then his voice faltered. "Sabrina came by last week. I didn't let her in. I told her to leave for good, but she said something before she walked away." "What?" "She said she'll never forgive you." I met his eyes. "She might be right." He swallowed hard. "But you'll think about it?" "I'll think about whether forgiveness means going back or moving forward alone." He nodded slowly, the kind of nod that hurts more than an argument. "Whatever you decide," he said, "I'll understand." When he left, I didn't cry. I didn't shake. I simply sat there, watching the door, and realized that somewhere between betrayal and boundary, I had become my own witness. The next morning, sunlight touched the windowsill. The plant, once wilting, had bloomed. A small white flower, fragile but alive. I laughed softly, the kind of laugh that tastes like closure. Maybe forgiveness wasn't something you gave. Maybe it was something you grew. 3 months passed. Seasons shifted quietly, like a curtain falling between 2 acts of the same play. The air outside grew warmer, softer, easier to breathe. My apartment began to look less like a temporary stop and more like a place that belonged to me. Books lining the shelf, a mug that always waited by the sink, the faint trace of sandalwood from a candle that refused to die out. Adrian texted only once every few weeks. Never to beg, never to guilt, just to share updates that felt like olive branches left on a doorstep. "Therapy is helping. I found a better job. I'm trying to become the man I should have been when you needed me to show up." I read them, sometimes twice, and then set my phone down without replying. Healing, I'd learned, didn't require performance. Sometimes silence is the loudest language you can speak. Then, one evening, he showed up again, not in desperation, but with a steadiness I hadn't seen before. "I didn't want to come without reason," he said. "So here." He handed me an envelope. Inside was a single sheet of paper, a finalized lease transfer. My name and mine alone, listed as the tenant. "I took myself off," he said. "It's yours, fully." I blinked. "Why?" "Because that house was supposed to be our future," he said quietly. "Now it can be your foundation. I don't want it to be a battlefield memory." His voice trembled, not with weakness, but with something closer to release. "I can't rewrite what I did," he continued, "but I can stop hiding behind excuses. I thought being needed made me worthy. I see now that being accountable does." I studied him. This version of Adrian stripped of ego, guilt, or defense. The man who had once stood by his sister's side and called me controlling was now standing alone, finally in control of himself. "I believe you," I said softly, "but believing isn't the same as returning." He nodded, a small, accepting motion. "Then I'll keep proving. Not to get you back, but because I don't want to go back to who I was." And when he left, I watched from the window as he crossed the street. No grand gestures, no backward glances, just a quiet man walking into accountability. And for the first time since everything fell apart, I didn't feel the need to follow or to flee. I sat down at my small table, the one that had held all my plans, all my doubts, and all my proofs. The same wobbly table that had once carried the weight of silence now held something lighter, peace. Weeks later, a letter arrived. No sender name, no return address. I opened it carefully, expecting another loose thread from the past. Instead, it was from Maya. "Dear Tomika, I wanted to thank you. You didn't just teach me about responsibility, you taught me what it means to face your own reflection. I'm saving for my own place now, and I stopped letting people talk me into being less than I am. You were right, dependence isn't loyalty. I hope you're happy, really happy. Maya." I read it twice, then placed it beside the blooming plant on the windowsill. The same plant that had once been a survivor now stood tall, steady, alive. That night, I walked through the city with no destination, just the rhythm of my footsteps and the pulse of new beginnings humming beneath the streetlights. Everything I had once fought to hold together had fallen apart, and somehow, in the falling, it had given me back myself. I didn't need revenge anymore. Not the quiet kind, not the poetic kind. Reality had already done the work. It had shown every truth, peeled back every illusion, and rebuilt me in the process. When I finally returned home, I made tea, opened in my window, and whispered to the night, "Sometimes the most powerful revenge is no revenge at all. Just living a life they thought you couldn't." And with that, I turned off the light, letting peace, at last, do its quiet work.